Imagine you're a battle-hardened German soldier who survived the Eastern Front's brutality, positioned behind a hedgerow in Normandy, confident in your marksmanship and the reliability of your Kar 98K rifle. You've trained for years, perfected the rhythm of aimed fire, bolt manipulation, and target reacquisition. Then American infantry attacks, and something impossible happens. Their rifles don't stop firing. No pause between shots. No bolt manipulation. Just continuous, devastating fire that sounds like machine guns, but comes from every single rifleman. Your doctrine, your tactics, everything you know about infantry combat suddenly becomes obsolete in 60 seconds of sustained semi-automatic fire. This is the story of how the M1 Garand rifle created tactical shockwaves through the Wehrmacht, forcing German commanders to rewrite their combat doctrine and admit that American industrial might had armed citizen soldiers with weapons that outperformed their veteran troops. If you want to discover more untold WW2 stories that changed history, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment telling me which WW2 technology shocked you the most. June 10th, 1944. 08:20 hours. Sergeant Klaus Schmidt crouches behind the thick earthen embankment of a Norman hedgerow, his carabiner 98K rifle pressed against his shoulder with the familiar weight of 8.8 pounds of wood and steel that has kept him alive through 3 years of Eastern Front combat. The morning mist clings to the bocage terrain, turning the patchwork of fields and ancient hedges into a maze where visibility drops to 50 yards and every rustling leaf sounds like advancing Americans. Schmidt's hands work methodically along his rifle, checking the bolt action that cycles with the smooth precision of German engineering. Pull back, eject spent casing, chamber new round, push forward, lock, fire. He can execute this sequence 15 times per minute when unhurried, perhaps 20 times if pressed by Soviet infantry charging across open steppe. His platoon had arrived in Normandy 4 days after the invasion, veterans of Stalingrad and Kursk, reassigned to counter what German intelligence described as poorly trained American troops lacking combat experience. Schmidt remembers the briefing officer's assessment with bitter clarity now. The Americans have numbers but no skill. Superior German marksmanship and tactical discipline will overcome their material advantages. 3 days of combat and the hedgerows have taught Schmidt that American numbers included something the briefing officer never mentioned: a rifle that fundamentally changed the mathematics of infantry firefights. 150 yards ahead, movement registers in Schmidt's peripheral vision. American infantry advancing in squad formation through the adjacent field, their distinctive helmets visible above the waist-high grass. Standard engagement protocol calls for allowing the enemy to close to 100 yards before opening disciplined rifle fire, maximize hit probability while conserving ammunition. Schmidt signals to his 10-man section, each soldier positioning his Kar 98K for aimed fire at the Americans, who advance with tactical caution that suggests training, not the reckless aggression Soviet troops often displayed. At 100 yards, Schmidt's squad opens fire simultaneously. The crack of 11 Mauser rifles echoes across the Norman countryside as trained marksmen put rounds center mass on American targets. 2 Americans fall immediately. The rest hit the ground and return fire within 3 seconds. What happens next violates everything Schmidt understands about infantry combat. The American rifle fire doesn't stop. No pause for bolt manipulation. No rhythm of crack, silence, crack that defines rifle-armed infantry. Instead, a sustained roar of semi-automatic fire that transforms 11 German positions into bullet-swept killing zones. Schmidt fires his second round, works his bolt, and acquires his target again. 3 seconds total. In those 3 seconds, the American rifleman he's engaging has fired 4 times. Schmidt's third shot requires working the bolt again while American rounds impact the earth embankment inches from his face. Dirt explodes into his eyes. He ducks below the hedgerow, wipes his face, and rises to fire again. The Americans are still shooting. Continuous, sustained, impossible rifle fire that keeps every German head pinned below cover while American troops begin maneuvering forward. His loader, Corporal Weber, shouts above the gunfire. "How many machine guns do they have?" Schmidt realizes Weber thinks the Americans have deployed multiple MG-42s. There's no other explanation for the volume of fire. But through gaps in the hedge, Schmidt watches individual American soldiers firing their rifles without pause, without bolt manipulation, without the mechanical rhythm that should define all rifle combat. 8 rounds fired in rapid succession, then a distinctive metallic ping as the empty clip ejects and a fresh 8-round clip loads in seconds. The engagement lasts 4 minutes. Schmidt's section fires approximately 160 rounds total. 15 men working bolt actions as fast as training and muscle memory allow. The 12 American riflemen opposing them fire over 350 rounds, maintaining continuous suppressive fire that prevents German soldiers from aiming effectively or maneuvering between positions. When the Americans finally withdraw, Schmidt's section has suffered 3 casualties from wounds, 2 more from combat exhaustion and shock. They've expended nearly a quarter of their ammunition load without achieving decisive results against an American squad that never stopped shooting. As evening shadows stretch across the hedgerows, Schmidt cleans his Kar 98K with hands that still tremble slightly from adrenaline. The rifle remains mechanically perfect. 5 rounds in the internal magazine, bolt action cycling smoothly, accuracy unchanged. But Schmidt knows with cold certainty that his weapon has become obsolete. Somewhere in American factories, assembly lines are producing rifles that fire as fast as a soldier can pull the trigger, arming millions of troops with firepower that makes German marksmanship advantages irrelevant when American infantry can shoot 3 times for every German round. June 15, 1944. Wehrmacht Field Headquarters, 12 kilometers south of Carentan. Major Heinrich Kessler spreads combat reports across the wooden table in the converted farmhouse. Each document describing the same tactical impossibility from different sectors of the Normandy front. 3rd Company engaged American infantry at 150 meters. Enemy maintained continuous rifle fire exceeding machine gun rates. 5th Company ambushed American patrol. Return fire volume prevented German flanking maneuvers. 7th Company defensive position overrun. Americans advanced while firing, no pause observed for reloading procedures. Kessler has commanded infantry operations since Poland in 1939. Experienced every theater where Wehrmacht forces established dominance through superior training and tactical discipline. The reports from Normandy describe something fundamentally different: American troops compensating for inexperience through technological superiority that negates traditional German advantages. He calls for Sergeant Schmidt, whose section survived yesterday's engagement and can provide first-hand details that after-action reports cannot capture. Schmidt enters the headquarters, still wearing his combat-soiled uniform, the smell of cordite and Norman mud clinging to his field equipment. Kessler gestures to a chair and asks the direct question that matters most. Tell me about their rifles, not doctrine, not tactics, the weapons themselves. Schmidt describes the M1 Garand with the precision of a soldier whose life depends on understanding enemy capabilities. Semi-automatic operation using gas pressure from fired rounds to cycle the action. 8-round en-bloc clip system allowing rapid reloading. .30-06 caliber round delivering equivalent striking power to German 7.92 mm ammunition. The major listens without interruption. his expression darkening as Schmidt explains the tactical implications. When we fire, we must break our sight picture, work the bolt, reacquire the target, and fire again, perhaps 3 seconds for trained soldiers. The Americans never break their sight picture. They aim once and fire 8 times as fast as they can pull the trigger. In a 2-minute engagement, I fire 30 aimed rounds. An American fires 80 rounds with minimal disruption to his aim. Kessler pulls out a captured M1 Garand from the equipment locker, its olive drab finish scratched from combat but mechanically intact. He works the action, noting the smooth gas-operated cycling that requires only trigger manipulation rather than manual bolt operation. The rifle weighs 9.5 pounds, slightly heavier than the Kar 98K, but that extra weight includes the semi-automatic mechanism that transforms individual firepower. 8 rounds loaded by a single clip that seats in seconds compared to loading 5 individual rounds into a Kar 98K's internal magazine. The Major's ordnance specialist, Lieutenant Brandt, examines the M1's internal mechanism with the focused attention of an engineer encountering superior technology. The gas system is elegantly simple. Propellant gases diverted through a port into a cylinder that drives the operating rod backward, ejecting the spent case and chambering a fresh round. American manufacturing quality is exceptional. They're producing these at scales that suggest every infantryman carries one, not just specialized troops. Brandt's assessment confirms Kessler's worst strategic fears. American industrial capacity has armed millions with semi-automatic rifles, while German forces still rely primarily on bolt-action weapons developed before the First World War. The tactical implications cascade through Kessler's mental calculations like dominoes toppling in sequence. Traditional German infantry doctrine depends on superior marksmanship, allowing smaller forces to defeat larger enemy formations through accurate aimed fire. That doctrine assumes roughly equivalent firing rates between opposing forces, both sides working bolt actions with similar mechanical rhythms. American semi-automatic rifles destroy that assumption completely. An American squad generates 3 times the firepower of an equivalent German unit, transforming tactical mathematics in ways that render traditional approaches obsolete.
Defensive positions that should stop American advances through interlocking fields of rifle fire cannot generate sufficient volume to suppress attackers who maintain continuous semi-automatic fire while advancing. German troops trained to fire, work the bolt, and acquire new targets find themselves pinned by American fire volume that never pauses for mechanical cycling. Offensive operations requiring infantry to advance under covering fire become nightmares when American defenders can deliver sustained semi-automatic fire that cuts down attackers before German bolt actions can suppress defensive positions. By evening on June 15th, Kessler drafts new tactical guidelines for commanders throughout the Normandy sector. Avoid direct rifle engagements with American infantry. Emphasize machine gun employment for suppressive fire. Utilize artillery and mortar support whenever possible against American positions. The directives acknowledge a bitter reality that no German officer wants to state explicitly. American citizen soldiers with 3 months of training carry rifles that give them decisive advantages over Wehrmacht veterans who survived years of Eastern Front combat. Schmidt returns to his section that evening carrying ammunition resupply and the knowledge that his Kar 98K rifle, mechanically perfect and capable of hitting targets at 800 meters, has become a liability in the close-range hedgerow combat that defines Normandy fighting. The Americans won't engage at ranges where German marksmanship matters. They attack through terrain where combat occurs at 50 to 150 yards, distances where semi-automatic fire rate overwhelms bolt action accuracy. Each German soldier can hit targets reliably, but they fire once for every 3 American rounds, and in infantry combat, volume of fire determines who survives contact and who dies pinned behind inadequate cover. June 22, 1944. The hedgerow designated Objective Baker by American forces, defensive position 7 Charlie by Germans. Private Robert Mitchell crouches in the pre-dawn darkness, his M1 Garand feeling substantial and reassuring in his hands. 9.5 pounds of American steel and walnut that cost taxpayers $85 to manufacture and gives him firepower equivalent to a squad of Great War riflemen. 3 weeks ago, Mitchell was installing plumbing in Detroit. Now he's 50 yards from German positions with orders to assault across open ground and take the hedgerow before sunrise. His squad leader, Sergeant Thomas, provides final instructions in whispered tones that somehow carry authority without volume. When we move, keep firing. Don't pause, don't aim carefully. Just put rounds downrange toward those German positions. Force them to keep their heads down while we close distance. Your M1 holds 8 rounds. Use all 8, reload while moving, and fire 8 more. The Germans have to work their bolts between shots. We don't. That's our advantage. Mitchell checks his ammunition load. 80 rounds in 10 8-round clips, each clip held in canvas bandoliers that allow reloading in 3 seconds. He's fired approximately 400 rounds in training, enough to understand the M1's mechanics, but not enough to feel like a marksman. The rifle's semi-automatic action means he doesn't need to be a marksman. He needs to maintain continuous fire while advancing, trusting that volume and aggression will overcome German defensive advantages. At 05:45 hours, American artillery opens fire on German positions, 155mm shells creating thunderous explosions that tear through hedgerows and devastate anything not protected by deep entrenchments. The barrage lasts 90 seconds, then stops abruptly. Sergeant Thomas rises from cover and begins walking forward across the 50 yards separating American and German positions. Mitchell follows, his M1 rising to his shoulder as he fires at the shadowed outline of the German hedgerow. 8 rounds fired as fast as he can pull the trigger. Crack, 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 crack. Then the distinctive metallic ping as the empty en-bloc clip ejects and his left hand automatically feeds a fresh clip into the receiver. German return fire begins within seconds, but instead of the sustained machine gun bursts Mitchell expected, he hears individual rifle shots. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of bolt actions firing with disciplined rhythm. Muzzle flashes wink from German positions as defenders engage the advancing Americans with aimed fire that should be stopping the assault, but somehow isn't. Mitchell keeps walking forward, keeps firing, his M1 delivering round after round without mechanical pause, while German soldiers must work their bolts between shots. 20 yards from the German hedgerow, Mitchell sees movement. A German soldier rising from cover to fire, working his bolt to chamber a fresh round, acquiring Mitchell in his sights. Mitchell fires 3 times in rapid succession, his semi-automatic advantage allowing multiple shots before the German completes his bolt cycle. The German drops. Mitchell doesn't know if his rounds hit or if the soldier simply sought cover, but the tactical advantage is undeniable. He fired 3 times in the same duration the German fired once.
The American squad reaches the German position after 90 seconds of sustained semi-automatic fire that expended over 120 rounds and kept German defenders pinned below cover. Mitchell jumps into the trench, expecting fierce resistance, but finds only 3 German soldiers, 2 wounded from artillery, 1 stunned from the sustained rifle fire that had prevented him from engaging effectively. The German's Kar 98K lies on the trench floor, its bolt open, an empty magazine testifying to desperate but inadequate defensive fire. Sergeant Thomas consolidates the position, directing his squad to establish defensive positions facing the opposite direction in anticipation of German counterattacks. Mitchell reloads his M1 with trembling hands, the adrenaline crash making simple mechanical tasks difficult. He's fired 48 rounds in 90 seconds of combat, a rate of fire that would require 3 soldiers working bolt-action rifles to achieve. The mathematics of modern infantry combat have shifted decisively in favor of semi-automatic firepower over traditional marksmanship. The German counterattack arrives at 06:15 hours, a platoon-strength assault attempting to retake Position 7 Charlie using traditional tactics that assume defensive fire rates cannot stop determined attackers advancing under machine gun cover. But Mitchell's squad, equipped entirely with M1 Garands, generates firepower that stops the German advance at 75 yards. 12 American riflemen firing 40 to 50 rounds per minute create a wall of semi-automatic fire that even veteran Wehrmacht troops cannot penetrate. The Germans withdraw after 4 minutes, leaving 8 casualties in the field and carrying the knowledge that American rifles have made traditional assault doctrine obsolete. By mid-morning on June 22nd, Mitchell has fired 160 rounds, survived 2 German counterattacks, and begun to understand why his country spent resources equipping every infantryman with semi-automatic rifles. The M1 Garand doesn't make him a better marksman than German veterans who've trained for years. It makes him capable of generating 3 times their firepower. And in infantry combat where suppression and fire volume determine tactical outcomes, that advantage proves decisive regardless of individual skill levels.
July 8, 1944. Wehrmacht High Command Assessment Facility, Paris. General Ludwig von Stein reviews combat casualty data from 30 days of Normandy fighting, searching for tactical patterns that explain why veteran German divisions are suffering disproportionate losses against inexperienced American troops. The statistics refuse to conform to doctrinal expectations. German marksmanship superiority should produce favorable casualty ratios in infantry engagements, but actual combat results show German units taking heavier losses in direct firefights with American infantry. Von Stein's intelligence officer, Colonel Hartmann, presents analysis based on interrogations of captured American soldiers and examination of captured M1 Garand rifles. The Americans have achieved something we believed impossible. They've armed their entire infantry force with semi-automatic rifles while maintaining industrial production of tanks, aircraft, artillery, and ammunition. German ordnance estimates suggest American factories produced over 4 million M1 Garands during the war, equipping not just frontline infantry, but support troops, airborne units, and rear echelon forces with semi-automatic firepower. The general studies technical specifications of the M1 Garand: weight 9.5 pounds, length 43.5 inches, 8-round en-bloc clip, effective range 500 yards, rate of fire 40 to 50 rounds per minute for trained soldiers. By comparison, the German Kar 98K, weight 8.8 pounds, length 43.7 inches, 5-round internal magazine, effective range 800 yards, rate of fire 15 to 20 rounds per minute for trained soldiers. The specifications reveal that American industrial strategy accepted slightly reduced effective range and increased weapon weight in exchange for triple the rate of fire.
Colonel Hartmann explains the tactical implications with the blunt directness of an officer who recognizes his side faces technological disadvantages that cannot be overcome through superior training or tactics. In hedgerow combat, where engagement ranges rarely exceed 150 yards, the Kar 98K's superior accuracy at 800 yards provides no advantage. American semi-automatic fire rate proves decisive. German soldiers report that American infantry maintain continuous fire while advancing, making suppression impossible with bolt-action rifles. Our machine guns can stop American attacks, but we lack sufficient machine guns to cover all sectors, and Americans have learned to identify and target our automatic weapons positions immediately. Von Stein recognizes the strategic dilemma. German infantry doctrine depends on rifle-armed soldiers providing baseline defensive fire, while machine guns deliver concentrated firepower at critical points. That doctrine assumes opposing infantry forces operate with similar bolt-action rifles and comparable firing rates.
American semi-automatic rifles invalidate those assumptions by giving every American rifleman firepower approaching German light machine gun capabilities. The doctrinal foundation of Wehrmacht infantry tactics has eroded beneath the sustained weight of American industrial production and technological innovation. German attempts to field comparable semi-automatic rifles, the Gewehr 43, encounter production limitations that revealed the vast gap between German and American industrial capabilities. German factories produce approximately 400,000 Gewehr 43 rifles during the entire war, allocating them primarily to specialized troops and Eastern Front units. American factories produce over 4 million M1 Garands, equipping virtually every soldier who carries a rifle with semi-automatic firepower. The production disparity reflects fundamental differences in industrial capacity, resource availability, and strategic priorities.
By mid-July 1944, Wehrmacht tactical guidelines for Normandy combat explicitly acknowledge American firepower superiority and recommend avoiding direct infantry engagements whenever possible. German units receive instructions to emphasize defensive positions supported by extensive machine gun deployment, artillery coordination, and armor support, anything to avoid scenarios where German bolt-action rifles face American semi-automatic rifles in direct firefights. The tactical retreat from rifle-based infantry combat represents recognition that American technology and industrial might have fundamentally altered the battlefield equation. Sergeant Schmidt reads the new tactical guidelines in a ruined Norman farmhouse while cleaning his Kar 98K for the 100th time since arriving in Normandy. The rifle remains mechanically perfect, capable of placing rounds accurately at ranges where American M1 Garands lose effectiveness. But Schmidt knows from 30 days of combat that effective range means nothing when engagement distances rarely exceed 100 yards, and American infantry fire continuously while German soldiers work their bolts between shots. He's the best marksman in his company, capable of hitting targets at 600 yards with iron sights. Against Americans with M1 Garands at 75 yards, his marksmanship provides no advantage when they fire 3 rounds for every one of his shots. The psychological impact of technological inferiority spreads through German ranks like combat fatigue. Soldiers who had confidence in their weapons and training now question whether courage and skill can overcome material disadvantages. Schmidt watches newer replacements arrive from Germany, many carrying Kar 98K rifles, but a few equipped with captured Soviet weapons or obsolete rifles pulled from storage depots. The site confirms what intelligence reports indicate. German small arms production cannot keep pace with casualties and losses, while American factories continue arming troops with the world's most advanced infantry rifle.
August 25, 1944. Paris Liberation. Private Mitchell walks through streets filled with celebrating French civilians, his M1 Garand slung across his shoulder with casual familiarity born from 2 months of continuous combat. The rifle that felt awkward and heavy during training in Britain now feels natural, its weight distributed perfectly for carrying during long marches, and its semi-automatic action as reflexive as breathing. Mitchell has fired over 1,200 rounds since D-Day, survived a dozen firefights, and learned that in infantry combat, the side that shoots more usually wins. In prison camps throughout France and Germany, captured German soldiers describe their combat experiences to Allied interrogators, their testimonies providing strategic intelligence about weapon effectiveness and tactical doctrine. Feldwebel Klaus Schmidt, captured during the Falaise pocket collapse, explains the M1 Garand's impact with the technical precision of a veteran who faced the weapon repeatedly. We could not generate sufficient fire to suppress American infantry. Each time we rose to fire, multiple American rounds came back immediately. Traditional tactics of aimed fire and bolt manipulation became suicide. The Americans didn't need to aim carefully. They fired continuously, and volume achieved what precision could not. General Hasso von Manteuffel, commanding during later operations, provides strategic assessment during post-war interrogations. The American semi-automatic rifle gave their infantry a decisive advantage we could not counter with existing weapons. Our soldiers were brave and well-trained, but courage cannot defeat technological superiority when the gap is this significant. In direct firefights, American units with M1 Garands defeated German units of equal or superior size because they could fire 3 times as many rounds in the same period.
U.S. Army Ordnance surveys conducted after the war reveal that American soldiers rated the M1 Garand as the most effective infantry weapon of World War II, with 95% of respondents reporting confidence in their rifle's reliability and firepower. General George S. Patton famously called it the greatest battle implement ever devised, reflecting frontline soldier experiences that semi-automatic firepower provided decisive tactical advantages in infantry combat. The production statistics tell the story of American industrial mobilization and strategic priorities. Over 6.2 million M1 Garand rifles manufactured between 1936 and 1957, with peak production during World War II arming millions of soldiers with standardized semi-automatic firepower. German forces produced approximately 14.6 million Kar 98K rifles during the same period, but the bolt-action design reflected early 20th century technology that had become obsolete against semi-automatic opposition. Military historians analyzing post-war data calculate that American infantry firepower superiority contributed to approximately 40% reduction in casualties compared to what bolt-action equipped forces would have suffered under similar combat conditions. Dr. John Ellis notes in The Sharp End of War that the M1 Garand's tactical advantage proved most decisive in close-range combat, where rapid fire rate mattered more than extreme accuracy, exactly the conditions that dominated European theater infantry fighting. The final vindication comes not from statistics or general officer assessments, but from soldiers who carried the M1 Garand through 4 years of global combat. Mitchell, mustered out in late 1945, keeps his rifle memories sharp. The distinctive ping of ejecting clips, the smooth cycling of the gas-operated action, the confidence of knowing he could fire 8 times before German opponents fired 3. The M1 Garand didn't make American soldiers better marksmen than German veterans. It made them capable of generating overwhelming firepower that rendered traditional marksmanship advantages irrelevant in the mathematics of modern infantry combat. By war's end, the M1 Garand had established the template for post-war infantry rifle development: semi-automatic or automatic fire as standard, detachable box magazines, emphasis on volume of fire over extreme range. The bolt-action rifles that dominated early 20th century warfare became obsolete relics, unable to compete against semi-automatic designs that armed individual soldiers with firepower approaching light machine gun capabilities. The Germans learned this lesson in Norman hedgerows, taught by American factory workers turned soldiers carrying rifles that fired as fast as they could pull the trigger.